Hi, and welcome to our podcast. So I'm really excited today to be joined by Ali Long from Leeds Beckett University, but also very closely associated with Bradford. And why that matters today is because this year is Bradford's City of Culture. We're going to have a conversation about play and culture and how the two things interthread, and why play culture in Bradford in particular is so embedded, and the history of play in Bradford and the great work that happens here in Bradford.
Hello. Hi. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to come and speak today about a subject that I know we're both very passionate about. So yeah it's really nice to come and have a chat.
Brilliant. So shall we dive straight in?
Yeah.
And I guess the first thing that I want to ask you about is, am I right in trying to link children's play and culture? You know, the City of Culture, I'm going to read the exact words, is designed to recognise and celebrate the culture of our city and contribute to regeneration and cultural participation through a year-long cultural programme. How has play contributed to the culture of our city, and how should we celebrate that, I guess is...
Yeah.
Let's go.
I just don't think you can get beyond the fact that children's play is children's culture. And it's through play that children make sense of their world. It's how they build relationships. Of course, we know all this, but it's how they come together and understand all of those social processes. Play can be incredibly celebratory. It can be extremely fun. It also has a very much of a darker side to it that people find sometimes uncomfortable. But play and it is the child's culture. And historically there's been some lovely research about children's play and culture and how it transfers from geographically transfers between children in ways that is mind-boggling. And I'll give you an example shortly, but also how children's play culture exists generation to generation to generation. So there were some researchers called the OPIs, and they did lots of research about children's games and children's play in the school playground particularly, and their culture that existed within the playground. And they found some just amazing, just fascinating findings about how the fact that children's play culture exists in the playground, and there are similar play cultures that exist in playgrounds all around the world where you can't actually pin it down to any travel. It's not like a family from New Zealand has gone to a playground in North London and transferred games, but what you see are cultures of childhood, children's culture existing in the play space, often where it's very much child-led, child-controlled, and we see children creating their own spaces, their own ways of communicating with one another, the ways of communicating and spending time. So culture and play are so closely interlinked. So it's really wonderful that the Bradford City of Culture team have totally recognised and embraced that, because they're so embedded, they're so integrated together.
And actually, let's just step back a bit. Do you want to give us that example of how the play culture has travelled across the playgrounds?
Okay. So I'm a parent of two children, 5 and 10, and in the space of the last month and a half, we've watched this wonderful play culture develop in our school, and it's all around duckies. They're called duckies, and they are small resident animals, and there are ducks, but there are all kinds of other animals, marine animals, farm animals, and they're small. And the children in school have started trading these, and school have taken a really lovely approach to this, and they've said we're not banning them, but we've had a word with the children about it's only on a Friday. We have Ducky Friday, and the children are allowed to bring in their ducks and they're allowed to trade, but the staff are not going to get involved in that. It's up to the children. And what we've seen is this culture around duckies, absolutely just all the children are talking about duckies. This morning, it's Friday, this morning, drop the children off. Everybody's walking in with their pack of duckies, and there's already negotiations about who's trading with what. And what's actually happened is the whole school, and I'm talking nursery to year 6, have this shared narrative about these duckies, and they're all coming together, and there are rules that are created by the children themselves about who trades with who. It's got into like what you'd consider maybe intergenerational, but inter-year relationships are developing as a result. My big girl, who's 10, is walking out of school and talking to the very littlies about one very specific, which is a cockapoo that somebody has that everybody's after because it's really rare. But there's this beautiful culture of play developing, and the children are developing their own language to describe what it is that they're doing. That they aren't called duckies, but at school now they're called duckies. And children's culture, it's incredibly powerful, and the speed at which this culture has been accepted and developed by just a small school, it's just a 2-form entry school, is just beautiful. It's really wonderful to watch it going on.
I mean, I'm a natural observer. I spend all my time not working and working, observing people. And I can picture this scene so vividly, and I'm really curious to see if this spreads across Bradford now.
Funnily enough, on social media in our local community, somebody posted a picture of one of the ducks saying, does anybody know where these are coming from? So I think, they are falling, again, markers of children's culture. They're probably falling out of children's pockets. They're probably being passed to children at gymnastics that don't go to schools. And I'm not saying we're the epicentre of ducky. Definitely not. But there will be the way in which children will transfer their culture and their play. Oh, it's wonderful. It's really exciting. You should have seen the children. My little girl is sometimes a bit reluctant to set off through the gate, but somebody walked in with a bag of duckies, and so the conversation from the gate, and I watched her walk in, two children side by side, and it wasn't a child that she ordinarily talks with, and I think the fact that school has recognised the wonderful value of this.
Breaking down barriers, building relationships, negotiating.
It's lovely. And of course, in my house, my 10-year-old has been training my 5-year-old how to negotiate and how to
scaffolding.
It's off the charts. It's really exciting.
I feel like there's a research project. Going back to Bradford. Well, that is Bradford.
It is.
But going back to the City of Culture, and, it is great, like you say, that our City of Culture team in Bradford are recognising and integrating play into it. And I know they're working in partnership with Play Bradford, which in itself is great that we have that organisation in our city. And they are working with us. So tweaking our 50 things to do before you're 5 offer and turning that into a 25 things to do in 25. And one of our threads and themes through that is play. However, the whole thing is underpinned by play, because that's what our organisation is about. Why is play so important in Bradford? How is it that this city, and I've heard it at conferences and at meetings, that people within the play world know Bradford. How have we done that? Why have we been so special, and how can we celebrate it more?
A bit of a history lesson, I suppose. I'm really proud to have cut my teeth in Bradford as a playwork practitioner, a playwork professional. After graduating, this was where I came straight away. That's spent a lot of years in the city. In the late 1990s, we had a really strong play sector within the voluntary sector. And that was centred around a number of voluntary sector organisations, but one in particular was an organisation called Bradford Area Play Association that provided workforce development, training, resources, outreach work. It was a really smashing organisation. And at the time, there were some really knowledgeable people who worked for that organisation. And as the government policy for childcare evolved, and we ended up with an early years department within the local authority, a lot of those people were seconded into the local authority, bringing with them all of their play knowledge. We also had people in very senior leadership roles who were so grounded in the sector, early years childcare play sector, that the play work field was kind of pushing at an open door in Bradford. We were the first ever local authority to publish a play strategy. And that was well before there was a requirement to do so, tied to funding. So we published a play strategy, and everybody looked to Bradford and
absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, I was involved in supporting Calderdale with the writing of their strategy, and I recall, looking at Bradford. What can we learn from this? What can we take from this?
And a lot of people did, and we were advisors to the National Lottery Fund when they were developing criteria for what ended up being what's called the Big Lottery Fund Children's Play Programme. We were advising them on what it was to create a play strategy with others, of course. There were lots of other people involved. So we went from voluntary sector to local authority, and one of the priorities was to develop a play partnership. We had a play partnership which required members from across the city. Elected members were involved. We had a play champion who was elected to stand in that role, so leading from a local government perspective on the subject of children's play. But then we combined local voluntary sector partners, local authority partners. It was wonderful to work with the Park Service at the time, who were again really open to reviewing the way in which they provided for parks and countryside spaces for children and families. And there was such a lot of momentum in the late 90s towards the end of the 2000s. And I think because there was such a great deal of momentum, I think when everything started to shrink kind of post-2008, post the great financial crash and implementation of austerity measures, I think there was such a legacy left because there was such a lot of work that had happened. And of course, Play Bradford is an amazing organisation. At the time, that was the big swing. It was centred around an adventure playground, but the organisation recognised that it was so much more than that. And so as the local authority provision shrank, there were people on the ground who were there and very able and competent to pick up the baton and have continued to progress with the play agenda ever since. So Bradford still has a really healthy, really active, really community-based play community. And that they are still doing wonderful things. So it is incredibly exciting still in Bradford.
No, definitely. And I'm just going to take a step back then there. So you made reference to the big swing.
I did,
Tell me more about how the big swing came about, why an adventure playground is so important and different to, your playground in your park, etc.
So adventure playgrounds are, it was a post-war movement originally that was inspired by junk playgrounds in Europe, post-war. Adventure playgrounds are spaces where adults exist but don't intervene in the children's play worlds. Adventure playgrounds are there to support children to play in ways that meet their needs. They can be perceived to be incredibly therapeutic spaces because of that, because children often play in ways where society would probably condemn the kinds of play behaviours that they would be seeking to experience. Risky play, adventurous play involving great heights, great momentum, fires, and so on and so forth. And adventure playgrounds offer children experiences that we know are developmentally really important. So we, in the post-war period, 1950s to the 1970s, we saw really significant growth right across the country of adventure playgrounds. And then because of the Health and Safety at Work Act, and then in the 1980s, legislation around childcare, we saw a big shrinking of the sector. And so at the time, in the late 90s, early 2000s, Bradford didn't have any adventure playgrounds. Adventure playgrounds still existed across the country, but a lot had suffered as a result of legislative and policy changes and funding changes. But the big swing happened a little bit by accident. I worked with an amazing team of people: Mike Ragg, Mark Gladwin, Tina Lafferty, Julie Mattocks-Cawood, Sheila Rye. They are like the play bods of Bradford. And we got a random email as we were local authority officers working for the early years and childcare service. Random email saying, "Dear departments," it wasn't to us. "Dear departments across the council, we've got this land that because of the Disability Discrimination Act we can no longer use." And it was an adult education centre, environmental education centre. And I remember Mark, Mike and I heading down to the playground and the caretaker opening the gates, and we both looked at each other and were like, wow, we need this space. Because it felt like an adventure playground, and it felt like it was so full of potential. And it opened by accident because we held a conference. And the conference was all related to the play strategy. The play strategy was really picking up momentum at that stage as well. We ran a conference that was one day was at a hotel, and then the other day was at the adventure playground, and you can tell who did and didn't attend different days. And the second day was at the adventure playground. One of the activities that we did was we invited the adventure playground engineers to come and build a swing with the participants of the conference. And so at the end of the conference day, which was wonderful, little noses started peeping around the gates. And there was a group, and then it just slowly but surely got bigger, and there were lots of young people stood at the gate saying, "All right, mate, what's going on here?" And we were like, well, maybe this might become a bit of a playground. We're going to do some work. We might talk to your school, and so so tentative explaining what was going on, and we let them come in and have a look around and so on. And then the next thing we know, we're getting phone calls saying there's kids on the site. So we thought, well, we're going to have to roll with this. We're going to have to open because we've shown them. We've shown them. It was like the secret garden. And
just describe a little bit for people who are not from Bradford and don't know where is this site?
So it's in between two of Bradford's largest housing estates. So it's on the edge of one housing estate in particular that has even been in the media over the years, that experiences all kinds of social and economic disadvantage. So we are adventure playgrounds do generally exist in spaces where the population experiences.
It's right in the heart of the community.
It is. And up until that point, it had just been a fence. And it had been a fence that the actual community couldn't walk through. Wasn't for them. And then all of a sudden, the children were like, "This has potential."
What age were these children?
They were from about 4 to about 14, 16. And so we accidentally opened, and then sadly we accidentally had to shut because there was a fire. But actually, it gave us an opportunity to take a breath. We knew it would not survive in the local authority, and that was the intention was always to give it back to the community. And actually, the fire really sparked such a great deal of community support because parents saw the value immediately. Everybody got it. Everybody got it, because a lot of people say, what is adventure play work? What is playground? What and it did take a lot of bedding in, of course. But it then became the community's asset, and it's now run by Play Bradford. They've had it for years and years, and the handover from local authority to voluntary sector happened within the space of a few years, and they're a hugely competent, wonderful organisation doing amazing things, and they've grown from that adventure playground.
And I don't know if you know the answer to this, but there feels like there is a negative change in terms of children's access to play over the last probably more than a few years. Not as much spaces, more anxiety, if that's the right word, from parents about letting their children go out and play, and that's what our 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 is supposed to be, helping parents to gain the confidence to know that play is a good thing and to go out and do these things. Has engagement level with the Big Swing or Play Bradford as it is now changed, or are they still drawing in lots of children? They are still drawing in lots of children, and it's interesting because there is Bradford has 2 adventure playgrounds. So there's another adventure playground, the Valley Project, that they both draw in really significant numbers of children.
and also do a lot of outreach work. So are taking that model of child-directed, adventurous play into other communities, again, to create a culture of play in those communities where children are seen and they are heard and they are witnessed playing. And so so they are no longer seen as a threat, that they are seen as members of their community with equal right to access their local green space. You know, green space is for more than dog walkers. It is for children, and breaking down some of those barriers. And I think when I used to be a practitioner, with my uniform on and my badge that says I'm a play worker, with my badge saying I'm a play worker, I often think that was a really lovely mechanism to change cultures in communities around playing children. That said, for a short period of time, I'm an adult and I'm here, don't worry, I'm watching them, I'm keeping an eye on them. But of course, as a play worker, you are standing back, you're letting the children play in ways that they need. But in terms of like the community's anxieties about playing children, they were softened because there was somebody with a logo on their jumper who looked like they knew what they were doing. And I think what happens over time is that then becomes the norm. Seeing children playing in the community is the norm. And I know that there's been a lot of work from our academic colleagues and our colleagues across the country about this messaging around sufficient opportunities to play and there being sufficient time, permission and space. And permission, I think, is really, really key. And that isn't just the removal of no ball game signs. It's about passers-by not shouting at the children, or passers-by, just being a bit supportive and recognising that they have a right to be there. They have a right to be a bit loud and a bit shouty and a bit jumpy and a bit fast, because that's what they need to do in their local communities. And the second adventure playground that we have in Bradford has just done wonderful things in terms of building very slowly over time. It went from being a space and children playing to a container, to more frequent sessions, to a fence. The fence was the big thing, really major milestone. So, grassroots, child-led, responsive to the needs of the community, and really meeting the needs of a lot of children who wouldn't have access to play in the way that they are able to if it wasn't for those kinds of provision. So it's really great that Bradford's got not only one but two.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to close with a message for the government, really. Oh yes. We are anticipating a great report. There's already been an interim one from the Play Commission. But what I would like to say is, as well as having cities of culture, let's have a funded city of play. We have child-friendly city initiatives and other projects, but let's have a funded city of play. Bradford can be the first one, and that way we can embed this playfulness into other cities and empower parents to give that confidence, to reduce that anxiety, and give those children a space to play.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.